Is it possible to be able to read a room?
Yeah.
How would I go about reading a room?
Okay, so if you're reading like a public area,
Yeah.
let's go back to the airport, maybe.
Yeah.
If I'm in a public area, I really want to pay attention to the slowest moving person in the room. I want to pay attention to who is more confident than the other person. And that's typically going back to speed. And if I'm reading other people well, I'm also making a lot of eye contact with them. Mm-hmm. So that's also one of the fastest ways to get a read on another human being is how often they're blinking. And if a person is blinking fast, it's a sign of high stress. Mm-hmm. If they're blinking really slow, it's a sign of focus. So it's not always relaxation. So if I talk to a psychopath in an interrogation room or in a business negotiation, and they're very focused on prey, so we call that a prey focus, because they're going to manipulate somebody, their blink rate will almost be a 0. If I talk to somebody who's being deceptive, their blink rate can go up to like a 75, 80 without us even knowing it. So one of the reasons that blink rate is so reliable is that it's unconscious. We don't realize the shifts in blink rate and we don't manually control it very well. And if all that I would ever need to teach somebody, you don't have to count or know how many times per minute it's going on, is if I'm in a conversation, I'm going to start the conversation and say, is the blink rate normal? Does it look fast? Does it look slow? So what I'm really looking for in human behavior are changes. Mm-hmm. Changes. So if I'm on stage and let's say I'm doing a keynote and across the room, I'm making eye contact with all these people and I start seeing an increase in audience blink rate, I know I need to change the subject or change the topic right away.
So would you be looking at one particular person?
No. So
generally.
Yeah. So I would look at all of these eyes and pretend like I'm looking at one human.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Getting an average of the...
Yeah. So as I'm looking around, how many blinks do I see? And I'm going to pretend as if that was one human eye.
Okay. So when you get a lower blink rate, people are paying more attention.
Yeah. You're doing a great job. And I go to these pitch meetings where these entrepreneurs will go up and pitch these angel investors and stuff like that up in Washington. And you can measure who will pitch based on blink rate. You see a blink rate drop, that is the most interested person in the room. We do the same thing with jury selection. It's so reliable. And you read these articles about like someone breathing into their chest. It takes a while to get good at that with your peripheral vision, because I've taught it to people and they would spend a conversation with someone staring at their chest. And especially if you're talking to a woman, it's a bad idea. So blink rate is incredibly reliable. So to recap that skill, I start a conversation. Does it look pretty normal? Is it pretty fast or kind of slow? Then I'm going to look for changes. And that's all I'm looking for in a room of people is what's changing.
So 70 is deceptive and 0 is psychopath.
70 is stress, not always deception.
Stress, okay. And 0 is psychopath, basically.
0 might be psychopath. Context is the second letter C. There's 5 C's that we talk about in behavior profiling. So change, then context. Mm-hmm. So now, like somebody just crossed their arms and you read the internet, it says it's being defensive, withholding, closed off, see all that stuff. Well, what if it's freezing cold?
Yeah.
So now we have context.
So interesting. That actually happened in my last conversation. I try not to close off my body when I'm doing this, because sometimes my natural reaction is to go like this. And then sometimes, especially in here when it gets later and we didn't have the fan and the heater, I would go like this.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, but this is rude. It's rude to the guest. But I looked at my arms and I had these like massive goosebumps. And I was like, that's the context.
Yeah.
The context is I'm fucking freezing.
Yeah.
But to the guest, it would look like I'm going like this.
Yeah.
So this is why body language is so delicate, I think.
It is delicate. And it's so hard for people to do peer-reviewed research on it because there's a million variables. It's like saying, well, why should Roger Federer win a tennis match when he doesn't have any peer-reviewed studies to back up what he's doing?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with body language, because like they're doing interrogation research. So they're saying that a college kid who gets a lunch voucher and walks in and pretends to lie about a duck is exactly the same as someone who's been captured in combat sleep deprived for a few days, has a black hood over their head, and they're drugged into an interrogation room. And they're saying those behaviors are identical. Then there's the peer-reviewed research on lying and not lying. It's so, you cannot replicate human behavior that well. So, and people treat it like it's a pharmaceutical. Like I can put a Tylenol in somebody and I can measure all these responses. And it doesn't really go into a spreadsheet like that. And there's a lot of great research out there. But I'd say it's just so incredibly hard to replicate everything with perfection like that.
So what was the first C?
First C is change. I want to look for a change.
And then you want to look at context. Is there a third C?
That would be clusters.
Clusters.
So then you read articles that say someone looks a certain way or does a certain thing that might be deceptive. Like the most common one I hear is someone touches their nose. So someone touching their nose might be being deceptive. If you're just seeing one thing, I would say that almost never means anything. You want to look for a cluster of behavior. So they started getting nervous, which is a change. It's because I'm asking about where they were on Wednesday night. There's the context. And while they were getting nervous, they also started protecting their genitals with their hands and licking their lips, which is a hygienic gesture that we do. So now I have a change within the context that's appropriate, and there's a cluster of behavior. After that, I screen through culture. Is there some part of this person's culture or background that makes them do that? Like I was with a young person, we were watching a Pakistani person get interrogated. And you know how you commonly see that kind of head shake in that region of the world. And they said, shaking his head while he's saying yes. I'm like, now we get down to that C. This is culture, which rules out that behavior or gets rid of it. And finally, the least important thing on that list is the checklist. And by checklist, I mean, there is a list of known behaviors that are likely to be deception. And if you're in body language, you deal in likelihood. That's all we deal in. Some people say they're 100% sure on stuff, and I'm skeptical. But we deal in likelihood. So we should always process it in that. So someone licking their lips or moving a certain way, if it's on a checklist, does not mean that it's deceptive. Because what if they do it all the time? Then we don't have a change. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was thinking about things I used to do when I was younger. And there was just a period of my life where for some bizarre reason, I used to go like this. And I used to do it all the time.
Like a tick?
It was almost like a tick, yeah. Do you know what's really weird? I think this sounds like a really crazy thing to say, but one of my best friends had like curtains, like had the haircut curtains.
Okay.
And he used to flick it. And I almost like vicariously picked up the like flicking from him. I'd go like that all the time. But I was just thinking if someone saw me doing that, they would perceive that as some form of behavior, whereas it was just this weird thing that lasted for like 2 years when I was younger and then went away.
Yeah, but did you do it all the time?
I just did it, I don't know. I felt like I just did it randomly.
But that wouldn't be a change.
Okay, yeah.
If I was meeting you.
Yeah.
And you were on the Dragon's Den for a while.
Still am, yeah.
And people pitch you all kinds of ideas. That just having somebody on the show or just having those skills with you could see through a lot of those people. And whether or not they're being honest about what they're pitching, they're confident about what they're pitching. And you could look at a show like Shark Tank, and I can watch any episode of Shark Tank and look who's blinking the least. They're going to be the first to make an offer 99% of the time because they're the most focused on what's going on. They're personally invested. So that's fascinating, is that you could just look at one or two things and predict stress or focus. And just being able to do that, if you just took that one thing away from this, that would be a superpower.
Because I sit here with guests, right, and they talk about their life stories and stuff, and I often see some patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
Specifically like closing up when you ask someone something about their childhood or a specific sensitive subject in their life. You tend to see like I call it like self-soothing behavior to some degree. So it's difficult. And it's funny because we're all like amateur body language experts now. Yeah. Because there's been a lot of stuff online saying, spot this, did they touch their nose, etc. So it can also be dangerous.
It can. And it can give us these like, I saw this one thing, I'm never doing business with that guy.
Yeah.
And like he scratched his nose 3 times while he was talking about that. Well, look in his briefcase. He's got allergy medication in there. He's scratching his nose. The season just changed. It's springtime. His nose is red when he came in, so he's been scratching it for 30 minutes before he walked in the door. So now we start to realize I'm not seeing a change. I'm seeing something that was repetitive.
And communication is the third one in the triangle to success or failure. Communication. So what I've got so far is talking slow, is higher authority.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that if I want to be a master communicator, I should be thinking about?
Absolutely. So when it comes to communication, being a good storyteller is great. And there's a million podcasts out there that can teach somebody that. But it comes down to whether or not you can speak to the person that you are in front of and understanding what kind of person that is. And there's a few ways that I identify. I segregate people into 6 groups. And that's through what do they need from other people? So what kind of things do I need socially? And these are significance, acceptance, approval, intelligence, pity, and strength or / power. And in every conversation, if you ask somebody about themselves, they're going to come across and reveal one of those things to you. So if I know that you are a significance-driven person, and I'm selling you on how smart of an idea this is, and how intelligent you are for making this choice, I'm communicating in the way opposite in what you need to hear. So the moment that I hear you talk about yourself, your accomplishments, what you like in life, what happened for you this week, what's a great memory that you have, every conversation, you're going to hear this stuff starting to get revealed. So you hear somebody these are conversations or things that you could hear in a conversation pretty quickly. You start talking to somebody and they said, yeah, I'm actually the CEO at that company. I've got 490 people that work for me, and I'm probably going to be making an exit sometime next year. So you hear that. There's significance, right? Then you listen for approval. This is when you hear people say, well, I got to go up on stage tomorrow, but I suck at public speaking. I'm gonna really bomb at it. I'm just really nervous. Trying to get you to say, no, you don't suck. You're great. You did great last time. You're going to rock this. You got this. Then you have the acceptance people. They'll always use the terms like we, us, our, and just team. So the acceptance people are all about like, I'm a member of some kind of group, and that'll come across in their communication. So you ask a significance person about a vacation, and they say, yeah, I went down to Miami. It was fantastic. I had a great time. And I just got back last night. You ask an acceptance person, they'll say, we went down there. All of us went to this thing, and we did this. So you hear a lot of this language that talks about groups and membership. You get into the intelligence side. How often do you hear people go, yeah, I actually got my MBA from this person. Oh, I did my master's thesis on that. So you hear this intelligence stuff come out of people. And the pity is you can identify a pity person pretty well. And those are the hardest people to communicate to. And the pity person always, like if I want to give you the ideal thing to say to each one of these people, the pity person wants to hear, I can't believe all the stuff that you've been through and you've got to this point. Because I don't think many people would have. Pity wants recognition of suffering. And finally, we have the strength and power person. And this isn't always Biff from Back to the Future. So it can be somebody who's a leader in a company, but they want control. So significance is, do I make a difference? Strength and power is, do I have control over other people? These are everybody from like the leader who kind of forces his way into the top to the guy with the ridiculous jacked up pickup truck that has like the plastic testicles hanging off of the back of it.
And once you understand what categorization someone fits into, how would you show up in a way that's effective in communicating with them? Say, for example, if I'm talking to a significance person, do I just, and I'm trying to close a deal with them or something, do I pander to their significance? Is that?
Yeah. So there's a few other types that we teach intelligence people to identify. There's the 6 ways we make decisions, and then 6 ways that we have values, which is our end goal that we want. But I want to speak in a way that says this decision is going to increase your level of significance. And I want to compliment them on their level of significance right before I ask them for something. So I could say, Stephen, this is a great podcast. You've got millions of subscribers, and it's obvious you make a difference in so many people's lives. And you are a significance person. So that would be effective for you, because I know that you want to make the biggest difference that you can. And I want to speak in a way that A, speaks to their needs and lets them know that I am a source for that. But B, that making this decision, whatever we're talking about, selling a car, whatever, is going to increase your ability to get that same need from other people. So I think if we did this together, I think the number one thing that's going to happen right away is you're going to be able to impact twice as many people. You're going to leave a much deeper footprint on the world. So I'm giving you, we're going to double your subscribers or your listeners, but not just that. You're going to make a bigger impact and legacy on the world. So every time I'm thinking about needs, always think in terms of neurotransmitters. So if I can compliment someone on their need, that's what we need from other people. So I'm giving them like 500 million neurotransmitters being released when they hear this. So it's not just that we're kind of suffering and insecure and all these things that we talked about a minute ago. We're also drug addicts, everybody. We just need to identify the drug that person's addicted to.
I was thinking about the pen. I was going to ask you if I'm an intelligence person and you had to sell me the pen.
Yeah.
How would you go about that?
I think there's a lot of people in the world out there, and I think most people just do what other people do. And I'm sure you would agree. There's so many idiots out there that just get with the basic thing. I'm going to do this basic thing, and they don't really go outside the box very often. And every once in a while, you meet somebody who knows higher quality things. And you meet somebody who is able to see things at a level different than other people. And I would talk about that intelligence while subconsciously I'm associating all of that with this. This is different. It's unique. It's a pencil. But it's not like other pencils. It's not the basic run-of-the-mill thing. So I want to present that in a way, and I'm going to start with a negative comment. And this is one of the most effective persuasion strategies I'm going to negatively associate something I don't want you to have. So let's say we're starting our podcast, and I'm afraid Stephen's not going to connect with me. And I know that you're significance driven. As we started out, imagine if I said something at the very beginning of this podcast and I said, Stephen, thanks for having me, man. And there's so many people out there. And anytime I say something negative in a conversation, I never want to gesture in between you and me. I always want to gesture away. So we're talking about other people. There's so many people out there who just don't really give back to the world. And they don't really have an interest in helping other people. And it's like every time you meet one of those people, you sit down with them, it's like all of them have the same thing in common. They can't just stop and connect when they sit down with somebody. So I'm demonizing a trait, using your needs that I don't want you to have, like the inability to connect.
Okay, interesting. And you're consciously pointing off to gesture to it's others, not...
Right, until I said the word connect. And then I gestured between you and me, back and forth between both of us. And that word stop is a very powerful word in the English language. So when I said, it's like all of them have the same quality to them. They can't just stop and fully connect with somebody else. That's a very subtle thing, but I've used your neurotransmitters, I've used your needs, and I've got you to agree. You nodded your head. Agree that those people don't really connect well with other people. So that's how powerful that stuff can be. And you can use the same thing in reverse. And I could say a positive thing. And I could say, Stephen, what's fascinating to me is I've gone around the world. I've met several entrepreneurs. I've met people who are on TV. And it's like you think that they are just dismissive offhand before you meet them. And it's incredible when you meet these people. It's like all of them have this ability to just tune everything out and just completely connect with somebody. And that would have the same effect.
And what's going on there? People, we want to be that person. because it's positive, we want to live up to that expectation set?
Right. So what I've done is I've got you to say, as Chris Voss would put it, that's right.
Okay.
But I've got you to say that about who you are as a person.
Okay.
So now I'm not changing your ideas, I'm changing your identity.
Changing my identity, or?
Yeah, because you've made an agreement about who you are. You've nodded your head.
Okay.
And if I wanted to take that further, I would make an admission first, and I'd say, you know what, I had social anxiety growing up, and I'm curious, what is it that, have you always been able to just connect with everybody you talk to, or is this something that you had to work on?
Oh, is that a question?
Yeah.
Okay, but I know it's not a question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
no, it's a good question.
The moment that you ask, that you start to answer that question, you've made an agreement about who you are as a person. So if I wanted somebody to be less closed off, I might say, you know, I've spent my whole life just worried about what other people think. And I was 25 before I got to a point where I was able to open up. Have you always been this open with people, or did you have to work on that? Mm-hmm. So just any answer, and no one's going to give you an answer of like, actually, I'm just closed off. I'm very closed-minded, and that's maybe a 0.1% of people. So small agreements, and none of these are designed for people to take word for word. I guess they can. But it's about the idea of getting someone to comment on their own identity, who they are as a person.
Is there anything else as it relates to communication that's especially important? It's funny that so many people are interested in the communication part more so than the listening part.
They want the flight checklist.
Yeah. It was the thing with Julian Treasure, who did the TED Talk on how to be a great speaker. Mm-hmm. He told me he also did a TED Talk on how to be a great listener. No one listened. He said everyone wanted to. His one on speaking has got like 35 million views, but the one on listening, just no one's interested in that. But I'm guessing listening plays a pretty critical role to being a great speaker. Yeah,
and listening means I can identify who you are and what the needs that are driving you, and the social needs, and the way that you make decisions.
Is that part of the observation part?
Yes, absolutely. Just listening to that means that now I have the right words to use for the communication, and the right understanding of what motivates you as a person. So if I'm a therapist, that makes me a better therapist. If I'm a hostage negotiator, that makes me a better hostage negotiator. And if I'm a suicide hotline operator, that makes me way better at my job because I'm understanding exactly who I'm talking to. And my goal is to talk someone into doing something that they normally would not do.
You talk about this elicitation.
Yeah.
What is elicitation? It's a CIA technique, right?
It is. It was originally came up with by this guy named John Nolan, and his book is no longer for sale. You have to get it on eBay. Like, it's hard to find. But the book is called Confidential.
Why isn't it no longer for sale?
I think that he just kind of pulled it off the shelf. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So elicitation is about using statements instead of questions. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you and I walk into Whole Foods, we're in New York, so it's probably a block away somewhere. Mm-hmm. And we walk in there, and there's, let's say there's a young lady stocking produce. Mm-hmm. And you get in there, and I say, all right, Stephen, your goal is to go figure out how much she makes in 60 seconds, and you're not allowed to ask any questions or be awkward. And that's tough, right? It sounds really tough. So if you went over to her, and this is a generalization just to get you to understand what elicitation is, and said, hey, I'm trying to find the baby carrots. And she walks you over there, but while you're walking, you say, I just read this article online that says all Whole Foods employees just got bumped up to $26 an hour. That's fantastic. And she turns around and goes, what? No, I make 17. So now she doesn't feel like she's been pressed or questioned about how much she makes. She's correcting you. Mm-hmm. Or let's say you got into an Uber tonight and you said, I just read this article that Uber drivers were one of the top most highly satisfied employees in the country. You're going to get a correction. And you're going to be like, what? Where did you read that? So triggering a need to correct the record is one of the easiest ways to use elicitation, but it's only one. Another one is just making a statement afterwards. and saying, I bet you had some interesting experiences doing that, or I can imagine that was challenging. Statements are always going to be better than asking pointed questions because a person feels like they're volunteering information. The third layer of that is disbelief. So let's say I wanted to ask if you just got back from vacation and I didn't want to use any questions. Let's say we meet up for dinner or something, and I said, Steven, you look like you just got back from a vacation. That's a statement. And you're like, no, actually, I've been doing this, 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 and this. So now you've given me more than if I just asked if you were on vacation. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow, that had to be interesting. I can't imagine that. There's got to be a lot of stuff going on there. And you start talking more and more and more. And then, like, that sounds great. There was no challenges to that entire trip. I love when everything is 100% flawless. And you're like, no, well, actually, and then you start going into that, and I'm like, no way. Then now we have disbelief that comes in. And I haven't asked a single question yet. So that's one thing that I challenge everybody that I train to get really good at is that elicitation piece. So how many layers can I get into a person or a conversation just using these statements? And that's where I wrote, there's a whole chapter about it in this book here. But that elicitation is powerful because we're not being asked questions. So our brain doesn't set off little security alarms. And this is how Soviet spies would get information from a 19-year-old U.S. Navy sailor in the early days of the Cold War. Ship would pull into Thailand, or a submarine would pull into Thailand or Singapore, and a Russian would go up, and these sailors would be drinking at the bar. Russian would sit there. He's got a Aloha shirt on or something, and strike up a conversation. And they say, I know that the German submarines could outrun you because their propellers are 22 and all of your submarine propellers are 18 feet in diameter. And the sailor, slightly drunk, turns around and says, no, they're not. And starts giving up all this information just to correct the record. And that's all they did back then, was just correcting the record. I'm triggering this need to offer some kind of correction to information that's inaccurate. And even with business intelligence, let's say that a company's moving and they have to get business intelligence. Somebody at that company will get approached at a bar and somebody will say, yeah, I heard you guys are moving between March and April. And they'll get corrected and they'll say, no, it's actually February, but we're not really supposed to talk about it. It's like, there's no way you're going to move in February. It's too cold and the interest rates are up too high. There's no possible way that the CEO would ever do that. It's like, yeah. And then you're going to get more information out because of the disbelief. So that was correcting the record. A second technique called bracketing, where I'm giving you a series like between March and May, or between 39 and 59. And the third is the disbelief that starts getting this information out of people. So if you want to think about, like, how do I start a conversation or continue one using elicitation, think of the words so, and then do a recap. So you've been doing this for 3 years, or so this is not the best job, but it's getting things done for you. Or I bet. So I bet that was interesting. I bet there were still some challenges there. Or I bet you overcame a whole lot to get to this point. So, or I bet is the best way to do that.
And so if I say, I bet you hate that coffee.
Yeah.
That's a statement, but you're going to endeavor to correct the record either way.
Yeah.
And if you do hate the coffee, you'll say, yeah, like even you saying, yes, I do kind of hate it is offering up information.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And you could even go on with that. Like, I bet you hate that coffee. And somebody says, yeah, well, I do kind of hate it. Like, I can imagine you're the kind of person who likes coffee a very specific way. Well, yeah, here's how I like it a lot. You'd say, that's extremely interesting. No creamer, no sugar. And I'm just recapping.
So why is that better than me just going, how do you prefer your coffee?
Well, if we're just talking about coffee, it's not sensitive information. So I wouldn't say that was better.
It's for sensitive information.
Yeah.
When you're trying to not get their guard up.
Yeah. So the rule of thumb is the more sensitive the information is that you need, the less questions you need to be asking.
And is that that does correlate to kind of like how I've, the information that the spies I've interviewed have given me. Like Andrew Bustamante and Mike Baker, they've both said that much of the game was like hearing someone out and just letting them talk and talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
but not being too pushy.
Yeah. And that's the best way to not be pushy, is to use the elicitation stuff.
Perception, context, permission, the PCP model, is a way of understanding how to get someone to do something, from joining a cult to buying an item.
Yeah. So the PCP model looks like it's 3 steps, but it's, I want you to view it as kind of dominoes. So one step starts the progress of coming down the other. And once that comes down, the next domino starts going down. Mm-hmm. So if I change your perception about something, then I change the context that you're viewing that in, which changes the way that you feel permission to do it. So I'll give you an example. Would you want a weird example or a boring one? Let's go with weird.
Okay.
So let's go with an attorney in Washington State was charged with assault of a woman using hypnosis. And he would have her get naked in his office, which is something she would not normally do. And the attorney was studying this hypnosis and stuff like that. He wasn't, as far as I know, he was not even good. But he would hypnotize her and then tell her, at the end of the day, you come home from work and this is just like that time. I want you to picture yourself. It's the end of the day. You're coming home from work. You drop your keys in the bowl. You make your way to the bathroom. You turn on a hot shower. And now you're here getting ready to get into that shower. So he's changed her perception of where she is. He changed the context of neither one of you or me right now would like get naked on a podcast, but both of us are going to later tonight when we go to shower. So, but because that's a different context. So he modified the context, which gave her permission to remove clothing or do something that we otherwise wouldn't do in a social setting. One of the ways I studied this, and it was fascinating, is cult recruiters. And I spent a long time, 6 weeks, working with these cult recruiters. And I was back and forth between cult recruiters and door-to-door salespeople. And these are hard-hitting people, man. It's a hard job, door-to-door sales. But they talk people into doing things they probably wouldn't otherwise have done. Mm-hmm. Installing a $95,000 solar system on their roof, or buying a vacuum cleaner, or joining a cult that's probably harmful.